welcome back to Rock M Reacts, right live from the press box post game. After Missouri just narrowly, emphasis on the narrowly, edged Middle Tennessee State 23-19. A lot to digest from this game. Jaden, just kind of your instant takeaway from what we just witnessed.
Man, games like this are tough because there's games where you look at it and you're like, a win's a win. This one was, as Drinkwitz said, hard fought, but you come away with a lot of, I would say, question marks. Sometimes it's just not, you come away from a victory and you're like, this doesn't feel as good, especially with the team that is coming in next week, a really tough team, a lot more talented in pretty much every aspect than Middle Tennessee State was. So, kind of alarmed after this victory, but, 2-0 for the first time since 2018. You'll take a win where you can get it.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is the first time in the Drinkwitz era that he has started out 2-0 in his season, so there is that positive. But in the press conference, as you mentioned, it was the tone within the team, especially everybody except for Darius Robinson, who he just lives with a smile on his face permanently. But Brady Cook definitely seemed like a guy that knew we got to get to work and fix a lot of things before next week. Drinkwitz was definitely in the same mindset. It does seem like a team that seems a little defeated after the first 2 weeks have not been. Robinson, I think one of the best things he said during the presser was this was not the standard of defense that we had talked to you guys about throughout the whole summer, telling the media about how different things were going to be this year. They haven't shown that as of yet, at least for 60 minutes in a game, and they're going to need to play substantially better next week, as you said, against Kansas State. Wildcats look good again today with the victory over Troy. So
Troy's a good team, too.
Yeah, and Troy's a very good team out of the Sun Belt, and they beat them by more points than Mizzou's beat either of the first two opponents they played. So concerning points. We'll start off with a positive, though. Daylan Carnell today started on the defensive side, and we knew coming into the season that he was going to be one of the faces of the defense, but flying all over the place, making great tackles. Coverage has never been a strong suit. That's all right. He was flying all over the place. Just what did you see from him today, and kind of how do you see his role developing throughout the season?
And yeah, coverage you say is not his strong suit. I remember a play out here on the field, and it was on a third down, and he had pretty sticky good coverage. So, that's a sign for him. If he can develop in his coverage, he's going to become more complete player. But, he was flying around. That defense was flying around, trying to neutralize that Middle Tennessee State, high-tempo offense early on. And I know there's a few plays with Daylan. He was like early on the downs. I think he had a good tackle for loss early. And then there was another first down where he made I think it was a run stuff or pass stuffing play. I can't quite remember, but it got Middle Tennessee State behind on downs. And his physicality was there, along with the entire defense, especially early on. So, outstanding game from him. I would say he's the defensive MVP of tonight's performance.
Pretty safe bet. Yeah, it was interesting, especially early in the game. You saw MTSU really attacking the perimeter a lot, screen passes, sweeps, stuff like that, and that was not working. The speed and the talent on this defense is just too, especially going against an opponent like MTSU. They're not going to be able to get away with that. Credit Rick Stock still, and especially, and I might butcher his last name, but Nick Vadiato, one of the two. He played an incredible game himself. The adjustments they made where they just let him start runs, some more design runs as well in that second half for him. That was really something I don't think Baker expected coming into this game, and that kind of burned them at times. But then later on, you saw them start spying him with Hopper and guys like Carnell as well. Ended up working out. Another point on Carnell, though, is that he's also still only a sophomore. He still has such a long way to go. He could be a coverage star as well by the time he's a junior, senior, and that would likely lead to him being a top 2 or 3 round pick, if we're being honest, if he continues on this trajectory. So definitely a future star out in the perimeter there.
And that kind of just shows kind of like the talent disparity we saw against Mizzou and Middle Tennessee State. And like you said, credit to the Blue Raiders coming out. This is the third straight time this century they've came out and played Mizzou hard.
Yeah.
So, all credit to them, but Missouri's defense, they're really talented. They got some guys that can fly around and play, and it showed up here tonight, and that's a big reason why they're walking out 2-0 instead of 1-1.
Yeah. Defense at the end of the day, outside of the 4th and goal, MTSU scoring off, that was a bit disappointing. But other than that, I think defensive performance overall, based on having your back against the wall a lot of tonight, especially without getting much help from the offense, I think overall did well. To flip to the negatives and to go to the other side of the ball, we'll first talk about something that will be debated for at least a couple weeks, is that 4th down. I believe it was near midfield, late in the game, up by 13. You have the opportunity to go for it, 4th and 1, run out the clock, potentially score and put the game away. Drinkwitz opts to punt. MTSU drives, I believe it was 83-ish yards downfield, scores, makes this a ball game again, safety happens, et cetera, et cetera. You look back on that decision as a potential turning point of this game. A lot of people say, why are you not going for it? You should be able to run for 1 yard against MTSU. You're at home, you're at midfield, you're up. Drinkwitz in the postgame presser said pretty much the opposite. You're up by 13. Your defense is playing well. Why are you giving them the ball at midfield if you miss that? Certainly a fair point. Certainly probably the logical point here, but you were also the SEC team going up against a member of the Conference USA because they did not switch to the American. They're still so much changed up with that conference. But you should be able to get that yard and put that game away. I think that's the mindset a lot of people come into that with. Was that a scare decision from Drinkwitz? Was that the logical one? Obviously, hindsight's 2020 in that it didn't work out how we planned, but is that conservative play calling going to hurt him? It's hurt him in the past. Is it going to hurt him throughout this season?
I'm going to be honest with you. I would say yes, that's a scared play call. I mean, I believe they were on the 45. I believe it was 4th and 1, and you're up 2 possessions. You're on plus side territory. Just hand the ball off. I mean, the running lanes, for the most part, seem to be open pretty much all night, and we're going to talk about that here shortly a little bit. But, when you're in that situation, you're up 2 scores. It's in the 4th quarter. You're in, like I said, in positive, a situation. You're either going to get the first down or you're going to punt. And I believe what makes it even worse is they punted the ball. They were on the 45, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it went out of bounds at the 17-yard line.
Yeah, you didn't pin them deep like you
didn't. You didn't pin them deep as you wanted to. So that made the decision even look worse. And to add on to that, they would go right back downfield to score. So instead of being up 3 possessions, possibly 3 possessions, and they still go down and score, they'd make this a ball game again. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a questionable call. And, I think that hurts you. Like, this is early in the season. Do that stuff. If you keep with that same mindset going into this powerful conference, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we're going to get the same results as we've gotten in the previous years, mm-hmm. in my opinion.
And it's also, another point on that, you had an open punter competition throughout fall camp. Unless they're in the building, I'm not, but unless they know something I don't, you're not uber confident in either of those punters you're throwing out there at this point. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you're just guaranteed pinning them inside the 5 every time. You don't have a guy like that. A real quick side note I also did want to touch on. Mevis made a field goal, missed a PAT. I believe it was blocked. I haven't looked at the video yet, but I believe it was at least tipped slightly. But Drinkwitz did say in the postgame press conference he is very concerned about the kicking game. Not even just Mevis. Really, I don't even think Mevis is the big culprit he's staring at. He's looking at snap and hold. And they've been having rotating faces there throughout the time. What's your concern level with that going forward?
So I'm really concerned. And I think it's a lot more than Mevis. I think it goes down all the way, the entire PAT team, because looking at that play, they showed the replay of it, and there was a lot of pressure. It looked like that was coming from one side. And I think it may have been blocked. I couldn't really tell, but he pushed that kick. It was to the left, right? Mm-hmm. And the pressure was coming from the other side of him. So, I think it is concerning the way that kick was, because I don't think it's all Mevis. Last week, the laces were out, mm-hmm. which that's on, the holder and placeholder and long snapper, I'm trying to say. But yes, I am concerned about special teams. It goes beyond Mevis before we try to just completely throw him under the bus. It's the entire special teams unit. And even speaking more of a bigger picture on special teams, that kickoff that was brought out by
Marvin Burks,
the safety, I believe, was 2 plays later.
Mm-hmm.
Was that on the same drive?
I believe so, yeah.
And I think Drinkwitz, he was talking about, you got to take a touch back there, because he went back in the end zone mm-hmm. and got the ball and then ran it out and was stopped at the 16. And I believe if that's the same possession 2 plays later, it resulted in a safety, and that could have been bad for this team. Yeah. But special teams, yes, I would say my concern level there is a 10 out of 10.
And Drinkwitz post-game said that's a freshman mistake straight up, and they still, every player, coach said that mm-hmm. they still have a lot of confidence in Marvin Burks. He's still a young guy and we were field side today. Marvin Burks looks like a starting SEC defensive back on the field right now, which is impressive to say of a freshman. So there is that. Not too much of a knock on him. To continue alternating between positives and negatives, Nathaniel Peat had a great game tonight, kind of a breakout game for him of sorts after he was kind of forgotten a little bit about the end of last season. Didn't do too much last week, but we all saw the wide open 49-yard mm-hmm. touchdown catch. That was great to see him getting involved in the passing game as such a dynamic player. And then he also had 51 yards on the ground. Schrader led the way with 84, but that was on 23 attempts. Pete only ran it 8 times for 51 yards. That's a 6.4 average. He looked really good throughout today. It was probably the best we've seen him play since pre-Georgia game last mm-hmm. year, I could say, which it just adds so much more to the offense because he is such an explosive talent. Also just a great face and leader on this team when you hear him talk. He was also at the presser after the game. A very upbeat guy in general. He and D-Rob were the two guys that were in there smiling no matter what, because that's just kind of who they are. But a great game from Pete. Do you see this continuing forward, this kind of two-headed monster? Because last year it was like that early on, and then Schrader kind of took over down the stretch. Is Pete going to be able to continue doing this, and how so? Do they get more involved in the passing game too? Because that's something they talked about as well.
I feel like the two-headed monster hasn't even been used yet, in my opinion. I mean, Pete only had 9 touches the entire game between rushing and receiving. So I believe, I would love to see him get more opportunities.
None in the second half, as far as he didn't touch the ball in the
I
second
don't think
half,
he
as far as I
really did
remember.
either. I would love to see him more opportunities. I mean, 6.4 yards per carry, and he absolutely capitalized on that missed blitz by Middle Tennessee State. But when he runs the ball, he's been able to get some positive yards this year. I even thought last game, they could have given the ball to him more. So I would love to see him more involved with Cody Schrader in this offense, especially him in the passing game. I remember in fall camp, I was constantly saying that he is the best pass-catching running back on this team, and I would love to see him, be utilized more, whether it's the short passing game or the screen game. I would love to see him be more involved in this offense. And talking about him from a leader standpoint, knowing him for a long time off the field, yeah, he's a very great guy, very great, humble guy. He goes out there and works and does his best. So, but great game from him, a big contributor on the offensive side in this win alongside Luther Burden. So, I'm happy to see him perform, and I would love to see, critiquing this offense, him be more involved in the future.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, a local product out of Rockbridge High School, obviously, so there is a big conglomerate of just, hometown fans that are cheering him on, and love to see him back in Mizzou after his brief stint at Stanford. I did want to quickly touch on as well, just around the running game, the offensive line play tonight. I thought it was very 50-50. I would say last week I liked how they played more, but this week was a different challenge, and the fact that MTSU brings blitzes. I mean, if you watched the game, you saw they brought blitzes 2 to 3 plays per down. Or per set of downs, essentially. They were bringing 6 or 7 all the time. A lot was put on the running backs to pass protect. I thought they held up well. 4 sacks on Cook. The one of them, I believe, was at the end when he was just scrambling around and got touched the ground. So that doesn't really count. It was tough. It was going to be a tough task to consistently be able to protect against that. I thought the offensive line held serve well. Still too many penalties. I thought the run blocking was great. I still saw a ton of just gaping holes for Nathaniel Peat and Cody Schrader to run through tonight. Again, when you get into stiffer competition, can that hold up? We'll see. They're just going to need to cut down on the mistakes, I think, moving forward.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm going to echo what Drinkwitz says. There might be some personnel changes out there. Drinkwitz did mention that post-game. But, run blocking, I like to see them being able to create running lanes. It's just in the passing game I'm going to be worried about, especially playing tougher defenses going forward. And like you said, I don't know how many penalties we had tonight, but, again, way too many. We saw it back-to-back plays. I guess it was towards the end of the game where they were, in the 3rd and 1? Yeah. And then you had the false start. But it was the OPI, but it was an offensive pass.
Marcellus came in, who as far as I know, didn't start this game. Yeah. And he was in late game in a scenario. I believe he came off the field after that false start. So interesting to see kind of how that rotation is going to keep working out as well.
But there were still, a couple holding penalties in there. Way too many penalties. And this is something that hurt this team last year. And I specifically look at the Auburn and Georgia games last year. Penalties came up big, and this was one of the most penalized teams in college football in 2022. So that's something as a coach that's going to drive you nuts. You got to play clean football, especially if you want to get over this hump that Missouri is trying to get to. And this offensive line, yes, I would say they're opening up running lanes, but you got to protect the quarterback. You got to cut down on those penalties, and that's going to be key moving forward these next few weeks.
And the concern is that future opponents, especially SEC opponents, are going to look at the film from this game and say, if we just heat this offense up on passing downs, they can't adjust, because that's what happened with the safety pressure coming in Brady's face. He wasn't able to quickly enough throw it away to get it out of there. Actually, this is going to segue us perfectly into the final point of today, is Brady Cook's level of play today. It was difficult for him. I thought he did well on getting to some hot reads early in the first half. And then I feel like as the game went on, he got some happy feet. I think that clock in his head started getting shorter and shorter because he kept feeling that pressure all the time. So it was a very mixed bag for Brady. You got a great throw to Luther, of course, down the field that looked really good coming out of his hand. Didn't run a ton today, but he was effective when he did. It was not a clean game. He was probably even more, at least in my eyes, even more disappointed in that post-game press conference than Drinkwitz was, because he was I mean, you saw it. I forget the PR guy asked for any more questions, and Brady was already halfway up the board because he said he was like, tonight we'll sit on this one. Tomorrow morning we're getting up. We got to fix things, and there is a lot to do because he said it himself. He was not accurate enough tonight. He was not making great decisions. There was a lot, again, pressure in his face all the time. It's really tough to be a great quarterback, regardless of who you are, if that's a reality. But what did you think about how he played tonight? I mean, compared to last week, and also just moving into next week, what the momentum around him is, because he's going to be this week. That is going to be one of the most talked about things. Is Sam Horn going to appear next week?
And just starting off more with the positives, we did see that deep shot that he took to Luther Burden, and there was another one early in the game where it was dropped. We can debate on how the ball was thrown, but I thought it was a pretty good ball he thrown. But like you said, it's tough when the team's bringing that pressure, and a lot of quarterbacks, especially at the collegiate level, they don't do very well under pressure, especially if they keep getting hit. But overall, when we're talking about this offensive consistency, I will still, until we truly see it, not put it all on Brady Cook. And I still think out of all the quarterbacks they have between Cook, Sam Horn, Jake Garcia, each Saturday, and Drinkwitz has said this, even though that's a different story, but Brady Cook gives Missouri the best chance to win every Saturday, and I do believe that. It's just, it was hard. The whole offense didn't really have a good game today. Yeah. And going forward, they're really going to have to break down that film and correct stuff because, like we said at the top of this recording, K-State's not going to mess around. And, they're going to look at that, how Brady Cook kind of performed under pressure and be like, okay, if we do this, then we know what's going to happen. But Cook, he got Missouri the win, though. Mm-hmm. He made some plays to get them downfield, get them into scoring opportunities, and Missouri comes out with a 4-point victory. So you can't pin it all and bash the quarterback all week, because that's very, I would say, not as
short-sighted
smart
in a way, I feel like. Because, again, at the end of the day, let's play the hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
You throw Sam Horn or Jake Garcia out there tonight, they're facing the same pressure. Are they going to fare much better coming ice cold off the bench? No way. Even if they started this game, no way. I don't think any of the quarterbacks in this roster are playing much better than Cook did tonight if they're out there. Again, 14 for 19, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not like his numbers are terrible. It just wasn't the flashiest game. It wasn't coming off of, I guess not him personally, but just as a team, mediocre performance last week. You expected so much more of this team this week. I think that's what everybody's walking away from, saying it almost looked as if this team got worse between weeks 1 and 2. Yeah. And now you've got to make that big jump before week 3. Kansas State's going to be one of the most physical and just toughest teams that they play the entire season. It's going to test everybody. It's going to be a difficult one next Saturday morning. It'll be tough. Vengeance will be on people's mind as well, though. Last year, that was a true humbling that they took on that rainy morning in Manhattan. So we'll see. It's going to be one of the bigger games. Sold-out game as well. I will also comment the fans again tonight were really great. I believe it was 57, 645.
Yeah, I think it was the largest crowd since 2019, 2018.
Yeah. And next week we'll probably eclipse that. So at the end of the day, 2-0. As a Missouri Tiger fan, you haven't been able to say that since 2018.
Yeah.
You take that, you roll with it. You'd rather, Drinkwitz, probably the best thing he said in the post-game press conference, you would rather make all these mistakes and learn from them in a win than a loss. And that's what Missouri's doing right now. We will have to wait and see how next week goes. We will be back live from the press box right after the conclusion of next week's game against Kansas State. For Parker Gillam and Jaden Lewis and Rock M Reacts, we will see you guys next week.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. Beep. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone, or the Google Podcast app for Android, or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.